Washed out. Remember her alumni board, and so she joined us for a number of events. That's really cool. I love that. But Lisa, let's make sure you look at it. So if there was anybody who it was just a joke. Okay. Thank you so much. The first time here, I'll give you my card.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. How are you all doing today?
Great.
We're going to try one more time. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing today?
Great.
Look at that. Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon and to see you all here for what intends to be a very meaningful opportunity. We are so delighted to welcome Ambassador Brooke Anderson, the president of Pivotal Ventures, who is joining us today for a conversation on how to build lasting impact in a complicated world. How fitting is that of a topic? We are so very excited to welcome her along with her colleague. And if you have not had the opportunity, and I have not had the opportunity to meet you, my name is Edwina Sims. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Alumni Relations here at American University, and I work in the Office of University Advancement, where Matthew Einen serves as our Vice President for University Advancement. He is a part of our president's cabinet, and so I would like to ask him to simply be recognized at this time, just to say hello to everyone. That all being said, to our alumni, I would feel remiss as the Assistant Vice President for Alumni Relations by not acknowledging our alums in attendance. Thank you so much for being present. Thank you for showing up for AU. Thank you for being here to connect with our students and to connect with each other. It is so critically important, the role of alumni in shaping the future. So we know that you took time out of your schedules to be with us today, and we thank you for that. To our students who are with us, thank you for your eagerness to learn. Thank you for your interest in being here and being a part of pivotal conversations that we are engaging in today. And thank you for being the light of tomorrow for all of us. Today's program is proudly presented in partnership with the Sine Institute for Policy and Politics, the AU Women's Network, and the Women in Politics Institute, 3 communities deeply committed to advancing women's leadership initiatives, innovation, and impact in public life. Serving a global community of nearly 160,000 Eagles globally, we understand in the Office of University Advancement the key importance of creating spaces that foster connection, support professional and personal growth, and strengthen the bond between alumni and their institution. The AU Women's Network is especially proud to continue our collaboration with the Sine Institute for Policy and Politics as we work together to champion women's advancement, mentorship, and philanthropy while helping to shape the future of American University. We are so grateful for our community partnership with Pivotal Ventures to bring them here today, as Brooke Anderson is a distinguished lecturer for the Sine Institute for this year. Pivotal Ventures is an incredible organization driving meaningful change on a global scale. And we are delighted to have them, and especially as well, one of our very own, Emily Lockwood. Emily Lockwood is an alumna of American University, where she discovered her passion for gender equity, public policy, and social innovation. She currently serves as the Director of Women's Political Power at Pivotal Ventures. Prior to that, she held leadership roles as Senior Program Officer at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as Senior Marketing Director for Brand Marketing and Digital Strategy for Teach for America, and Digital Director for Emily's List. At Pivotal Ventures, Emily's work focuses on driving systemic change and building partnerships that expand opportunity, foster inclusive leadership, and thoughtful approach to commitment to equity that embodies the very spirit of the Sine Institute for Policy and Politics. Please join me and offer a very warm Eagle welcome to Emily Lockwood, who will introduce what I trust will be a very dynamic and inspiring conversation. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. I know this is going to be an incredibly inspiring, exciting, energizing conversation, having spent the morning with these two incredible leaders. My name is Emily Lockwood. I have the great privilege of leading the Women's Political Power Strategy at Pivotal. And I am a proud AU alum, class of '03, once an Eagle, always an Eagle. And it has just been so fun to be back on campus today and see all of the things that have changed, all the things that have not changed, the way that the students are thinking about the world. It's just really reinvigorated my love of this place and this community and the network and ideas that emerge from it. So thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to open the conversation today that is being hosted by the Sine Institute. The Sine Institute is dedicated to bringing together leaders and changemakers from across sectors to explore ideas that drive meaningful, long-term impact. And today's discussion perfectly embodies that mission. I am so honored to introduce two incredible leaders, and I have to say, one of them I work for now in some of the most world-changing, exciting work I can imagine out there at Pivotal. And one of them I worked for many years ago when I was, 25, 26, in a job I think I had no business doing at the time, and really showed me the way and helped me to become the leader that I am today. So first, we're honored to welcome Ambassador Brooke Anderson, President of Pivotal Ventures, that's the one I'm working for now, as Sine's Distinguished Lecturer. Ambassador Anderson's extraordinary career in diplomacy, national security, and philanthropy has been defined by her deep commitment to systems change, equity, and innovation. Her leadership at Pivotal Ventures, a company founded by Melinda French Gates, focuses on accelerating progress towards social, economic, and political equality for women and underrepresented communities. Joining her in conversation is Amy Dacey, Executive Director of the Sine Institute, whose own leadership and dedication to empowering future changemakers, I was one of the future changemakers, continue to strengthen the American university community. Together, they will explore themes of leadership, power, and long-term change, and how each of us can play a role in shaping a more inclusive future. Please join me in warmly welcoming Ambassador Brooke Anderson and Amy Dacey.
Okay. Wow. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And Ambassador, thank you so much. It has been a few years since I've seen you. I have been certainly watching the trajectory, all the important things that you've been working on with and we are truly honored to have you here with us at AU today. And let's get the most out of this time that we have together. And thank you so much, Emily. I can tell you stories, and if you stay for the reception, I will, about my time with Emily, but it is amazing to see you working with Brooke, doing the work you're doing now, and both of your commitment, I think, which is really incredible. We're very fortunate to have you here. And so, our fireside chat is called The Long Game, because when you look at this, Brooke, you and I were talking a little bit before, sometimes people think careers are a ladder. It's a jungle gym, right? You kind of move around and do different things. And the interesting thing to me is you've held key roles in national security, but now at Pivotal. And so what strategic mindset has stayed with you across those transitions? So where did you find the continuity in those two things?
Thank you, Amy. It is such a joy to be at American University. When I first moved to DC in 1988, I started meeting people who went to school here, and I kept thinking, I need to figure out how to get myself to American University, and it's taken me this long, so thank you, Amy.
You're welcome anytime.
And Amy and I haven't seen each other in 20 years. Oh my God, we worked on a campaign together.
Exactly the same.
Yeah. And, you know, when I think about all the different things I've worked on since I first moved to Washington, D.C., what I did was think about the issues that inspired me. Is the sound working? Okay. Yeah, you can hear me? Okay, I'm supposed to get closer to it. Ooh, this is my first time with a microphone. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, I'll be closer. So, you know, I've worked on a lot of big issues in my career. I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked for 2 administrations. I worked in the White House. I was an ambassador. I worked on the Iran nuclear negotiations. I've worked on peacekeeping. I've worked on stopping war. You know, a range of things. But the thing that has always driven me is like setting very big, audacious goals. Not just like the next step of what you want to get to, but what is the thing that ought to be? What is your big ambition for change? And then figuring out how to make steps toward it. The thing I realized and the thing that brought me to Pivotal is there is one lever that will drive positive progress on every single issue I care about. And that is the fact we live in a world where we're holding back 50% of the population because women do not have their full power. That's political power, that's economic power, that's social power. We have made progress, for sure. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my mother, who had some resources and was this very independent person, she could not get a credit card without getting a signature from my father. She was humiliated by that. She was frustrated by that. Like, that world does not exist. But there are challenges today. We have a long way to go. And so when I walked in the door at Pivotal, I thought, okay, that big sense of setting an ambitious goal and figuring out how to make specific progress toward it, this is my spot at this point in my career.
Well, okay, daunting as that is, it makes me think, like, how many am I going to get a couple more hours out of today and try to, you know, do all that you've done? But, you know, when I think about it, though, is sometimes that seems impossible, this long-term and how you define the long-term strategy when you can't tell me you're not putting out fires every day. So how do you balance that? When I think about, especially when I think about the national security portfolio, when I think about the philanthropic portfolio, which all of these global things affect it, how do you balance that? Because if you're going to play the long game, you still have to put out the fires right in front of you. Right?
Oh, for sure. Like, you need to be cognizant of the environment that you're in. But having that vision of what ought to be, that thing you're working toward and for, having that North Star is essential. That's the starting place. And the thing I will also say is that change does not happen in a linear way, right? It's not, you can look through like a retrospectoscope and kind of how things came together and piece things together and think, oh, it's kind of linear. It's not. It is a lot of things that contribute to positive change. And so being able to know what you're working toward and then being able to adapt, be agile, take advantage of opportunities when they open up, and also deal with headwinds, right? I remember when I first moved to Washington, and everything I grew up with was the Cold War. The idea that the United States and the Soviet Union could end up in an exchange of nuclear weapons that would destroy the planet. Both countries had, and frankly still have, enough nuclear weapons to literally destroy the planet. And all the foreign policy thinkers, like at that point, you know, there I was like, I want to work in foreign policy. I was new. I was, 2 years out of college. So I was listening to what all the experts were saying. And all the experts were saying that this Cold War, this would continue. This is a fact. I have a red light on my microphone.
Oh, now it's green.
Now it's green. Okay.
We're not censoring you, I promise.
My walk-off music will start soon. All the experts, right, and all the people that I looked up to as like the big thinkers, most of them would be like, this is a permanent feature, design your strategy.
Okay.
There, try.
I can talk loud.
Maybe I'm doing something. Maybe a foreign power is interfering with my microphone, as I'm about to talk about the Cold War. And they were right every single day. Until one day in November 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. Right? So change can happen, and it can happen fast, and it can happen in an instant. But there are a lot of things that lead up to it and build toward it. I take a lot of inspiration by something that civil rights lawyer Sherrilyn Ifill said. When she was talking about social change and what it takes to drive social progress over the long term. And she said, there are times when you are harvesting, where a lot can happen and you can make progress fast. And then there are also times when you're planting. And that planting can be backbreaking work, and you don't know which seeds you're putting in the ground are actually going to turn into something. But change is not linear, right? It takes a lot of different things coming together. And there are moments in your career, in your work, where you will be in a planting time.
I'm trying to take that all in, because what I'm hearing though also is we talked a lot in that we just gave us and the vision about change. But at the same time, how important is steady leadership when you're going through that change? And how do you define yourself as a steady leader? How people you've worked for, how important is that in making sure you're moving forward in this sea of change?
Sure. What I try and hold on to is that North Star, is that big vision. What is the thing I'm really working toward? Keep my eye on that. And then also make decisions based on what's going on right now. Like, what are the steps that are going to get me closer to that vision? Part of that is listening to different people. In the national security field, we call this sort of red teaming, right? Where you bring in you've got an idea, and then you bring in a bunch of people to kind of rip it apart and say, well, actually, you're missing this, or this could happen, et cetera, right? We're not doing enough red teaming generally in our country right now with all the polarization that's happening. We're not finding ways to come together when we have different views on issues to actually talk them through in a way that can get to constructive outcome. We're not doing enough of that. And one of the things that gives me hope and the kind of steady leadership I'm seeing out there when I look out in the country and when I look out in the world are those people who are coming together and doing that. Those pockets are there. There is work happening like that, and it needs support.
Well, it's interesting you bring up hope, because there's the skill set, there's the defining your work, there's the quantitative way to move forward, but there's also this, how do you maintain hope? How do you make sure that mentally you're being positive about the goals you need to reach? Because that has to be, I imagine, a part of that.
Yeah. I think of hope as an action. I don't think hope is sort of lying in a hammock and dreaming. For me, hope is an active pursuit. In 2021, there were 1.1 million girls in Afghanistan going to secondary school. Today, there are none. There is a woman, her name is Shabana, and she's an educator. And when that happened, she moved her school to Rwanda. And girls from Afghanistan, from around the world, come there in person and also virtually, and they are studying. And Shabana said something, I wrote it down, it's the one thing I wrote down to bring in here today. She said, inside the sadness, inside the anger and honesty, I choose to find hope. What Shabana is doing is hope, and it is action. And there is so much of that going on right now. so many things that people are doing. And look, we won't know which of those things in combination with each other are going to spark something.
Well, when we're talking about hope, I just pushed a button and it worked. I'm tech savvy. When we're talking about hope, you also, the story you shared about these Afghani women, there's a resilience there. So to me, resilience is such a huge part of this, not only personally. So I'm curious about how you define resilience personally, but institutional resilience, because I think about the work that you do at Pivotal. There have been times where you were able to move things forward. There have been times when you feel like maybe you've been standing still. How do you build resilience personally, but also in the work that you're doing institutionally?
Yeah. For resilience personally, I mean, it's right, all the things. How do you get your cup filled back up after you've had a tough day, a tough week, a tough month, a tough year? Who are the people you want to be around who inspire you or actually just provide a comfortable place and a lovely meal around a table? And it's also just finding time to recharge. For me personally, I recharge by going into the mountains. I live in Bozeman, Montana. I work in Seattle. But when I really get lost, I go hike in the mountains, and it's something about being right-sized. I'm like this. The mountain's huge. I've been here a minute. The mountains have been there for a very long time. And that just helps put the things that I'm worried about, the things that I'm working on, the problems I'm trying to solve, in the proper proportion. And I come back with a clearer head. Resilience for an organization is about being agile, but also clearly having that North Star. What are the big things you're working toward? And then having the agility to react when there's an opportunity to move something forward. For example, at Pivotal, we've been working on caregiving since way before I even walked in the door there, right? And when that work started, and our team was out talking to policymakers, out talking to business leaders and saying, we've got a caregiving crisis in this country. People would say, well, isn't that kind of a personal thing that each family should figure out for themselves? No. We are living in a society with a caregiving infrastructure, a caregiving economy that was built for the 1950s America. You know, in the same way you think about how the transportation industry was revolutionized and transformed with the introduction of, say, like Uber and Lyft, or this is an industry that is ripe for transformation, for change, to actually meet the needs of families now. At Pivotal, we're focused on how to remove the barriers that are holding women back. And one of the biggest barriers is the lack of options for caregiving. Most caregiving responsibilities fall onto women. Not all, but most. And it is the thing that can derail careers. It's the thing that can derail families. If there's one thing that you take away from this conversation that I'm sure is going to go in like many, many different directions today, these things that we're working on at Pivotal, the idea of figuring out how to stop holding back 50% of the people on the planet. If we can make progress on that, we will make a world that works better for everyone. This is not zero sum. This is making a world that will be better for all people on our planet.
So I have to ask, maybe not. I have to ask. I think I got it. Okay. I have to ask, have we walked too far away from incremental change? Because there does seem value in that and to aspire to these big things. But I think about the time that I worked on Capitol Hill, and I think sometimes we've gotten to this all or nothing scenario. So like when you think about the work at Pivotal, is there's benefit and gain and increment. Do you have to also celebrate some of the incremental change to get to the bigger goal? I mean, or is that not good enough?
I'll take change in any way it moves forward. I'd love big leaps.
Yeah.
But I also see that sometimes you have to take steps to get there. And we should not be afraid of taking steps. We should also not be afraid of sitting down with people who have really different views than we do. You know, I spent many years as a diplomat. Like, my job was to actually go sit down with people who have really different views from the United States, and, you know, people who have very different instructions about what they're supposed to accomplish. There is deep value in that, because that is how you broaden your perspective. That is also how you find solutions that won't come to you if you're just sitting down in an echo chamber with only people who agree with you. So I think that change in any form that it comes, any progress that can be made, is progress worth celebrating.
I agree to that. I think we definitely have to celebrate that for sure. Brooke, there's something I've been very, like, when I knew, we've been working on this for a year, by the way. We announced you a year ago that you were coming, and your schedule is amazing to work with, but, like, you're doing such good things. But this was the moment we needed to have you on campus. And one of the questions I've been wanting to ask you for a year, it's so interesting to me, is, oh, I guess it doesn't matter. You don't want me, did you cut me off? No. How do you define power? Because when people introduce you and they list all the different things you've worked on and all the different places you've worked, I'm so curious how you define power and what that means and how people should use that.
That's a big question.
I've been waiting a year.
It was really just the scheduling that was
hard. I know. But I've been thinking about it for a year.
Power. Power is the ability to set agendas. Power is the ability to make decisions. Power is the ability to move forward and, you know, kind of have choices. And we focus on increasing women's power because right now women's power is held back, and it's held back artificially, and it's held back with barriers that don't serve anyone, right? Anyone. But it's also interesting, like Amy, you know, when someone reads off my biography and, you know, you're like, whoa, there's some power there. I mean, I'm still me, right? So, like, for me, I understand the power that the experience that I have has. I understand the power that I have in my role as president of Pivotal, where we're able to experiment and figure out how to catalyze change, where we are out there looking for partners who are doing interesting, innovative work that kind of align with the big vision that we're trying to have, and we figure out how do we get power into their hands. One of the things you learn quickly in Washington is there are some people who think if you have power, you better hoard it because it's this limited supply. Put it in a box and sit on it. You know, the best way to lose power is to take that approach. When you have power, use it and use it for good. And when you have power, share it. Because there's no way, I don't care how brilliant you are, you don't have all the answers. And that's one of the things we try to do at Pivotal. We're thinking, like, who are leaders who are out there who have interesting ideas? And if we give them power, right, through some money that they can direct, what are they going to do with it? What are we going to learn from what they do with it? So
it seems like a lot of the focus on some of the programming when I was doing my research for Pivotal 2 is about helping people gain decision-making power. So what are some of the policies that you're focusing on that so much of that is helping people have more ability to make decisions for themselves that can better their lives as they kind of go forward? We've talked about a few policy issues this morning. We had some great roundtable discussions with some students one-on-one, and that's one of the things we were talking about, that decision-making power, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about decision-making power, it's, are you at the table where the decisions are being made? And we believe that women should be at the table where every decision is being made, right? There's economic power. But let's just talk, we're in Washington, D.C. Let's just talk a little bit about political power, right? We have been working to think about why, if women are about 50% of the population, why they aren't 50% of elected offices, the seats in elected offices, right? What are the barriers that are holding that back? And so we started doing some work to think about how to get more women elected. And then we realized it's not enough to get elected, it's can they actually effectively work once they are elected? And that led us to look at some reforms that actually need to be made for our political system writ large. And we're seeing some of these things happen. Right now, some of it's at the state level, right? But there is a woman who gave birth and then voted remotely, so she was not shut out from her voice being counted in a state legislature. That's progress. But if you're not at the table, if you're not in the room where the decisions are being made, you don't have the power you need.
So what do you think then are, what do you think, can we share?
You gave me the working one.
Okay, thank you. It is a good one. I like this one. What do you think then are the policy areas that maybe deserve the most focus in this short term? I just realized I'm asking you to pick your favorites. It's like asking you to pick your favorite, family member or like student, or because I know you've been a teacher before too. But like, what are some of the ones that you think that we have to focus on immediately to get to that, change, to get to some decision-making power for people?
Well, I've talked about one, right? There's women's political power. We've touched on another, which are what are the barriers that are actually holding women back in the workplace? And caregiving is one. Health. Women spend 25% more time in poor health than men. And it's not because there's something wrong with our bodies. It's because there's something wrong with the way that we research and support health. We're not putting attention and focus on diseases that affect women only or affect women differently. For a long time, the idea was that women's bodies are just kind of like men's bodies, but maybe a different size or something like that. But actually, women's bodies are different. And we need to invest in the research that will create the breakthroughs that will help support issues that affect women. When you're in poor health, like we all know this, everyone here's been sick with something at some point, a headache, flu or whatever. It's hard to fully be present and do everything that you want to do. Women are paying a health tax because we are not investing. We're not putting enough focus and research and attention into supporting their health. We're working in some areas through a partnership with Welcome Leap, a $100 million partnership to apply kind of the techniques that we've used in national security, right? DARPA, where you put like this very intensive focus on how do you get to breakthroughs? How do you get to breakthroughs fast? We are trying to accelerate progress in that area. So don't ask me to pick my children, you're right. There are a lot of areas
it was like
that we need to be
unfair.
working.
The minute it came out of my mouth, I'm like, that is not a fair thing to do. But this might be fair. You've seen things from the private sector and you've seen things from the public sector. How do you make change? Is one the place where it has to happen? Do they have to work together? Is there a different skill set? Is it the same skill set? Like, how different is those experiences for you in the public and the private sector?
Yeah, I had a long career working in government, and the ability to move things quickly and to drive change at that level, there's a lot of power there. Philanthropy has a different role, right? Philanthropy is about being a catalyst. We can take risks that you might not want to do with public, dollars, government dollars. We can de-risk ideas, we can try things, and then once they work, then they can be scaled up. So different tools, but you need all of them. Like, if you think about how change comes together in our society, right? Some of it is through government action, policy. Some of it is through business innovating. Some of it is through social movements, and some of it is through, you know, the work of nonprofits. So it's that combination of things. And the other thing I will say is that media is a critical part of progress.
Yeah, I didn't put it in there, but it is, because as you're trying to get your message out, obviously it matters a lot. Let me ask you this. I know some people are curious, and we're going to get to questions, so start getting your questions in your head for sure. But I want to ask a little bit about your personal journey and who's some of we talked a little bit about mentorship this morning too, and I'm just wondering who were some of the most important mentors or allies along the way when you think about the career you've built up.
Sure. When I was working on Capitol Hill, it took me a while to get that first job on Capitol Hill, but then I found myself like 7 years later, I was still working there and I was loving it. And it was actually the chief of staff in the congressional office where I was working, who slid the Washington Post, and then there was this column called In the Loop, which had all the government jobs. You remember that, right, Amy? And he was like, look at that job there. You could do that. I wouldn't have thought that I could have done that job, but he planted that seed. And then I thought to myself, I can't do that job. And then I thought, well, wait, maybe I can. And then I figured out how to get myself interviewed. And then I got that job. And then I found myself the director of public affairs for the Department of Energy. So the influence that you can have on other people you're working with and other people in your life is important. We all need a little nudge sometimes.
Well, let's give everybody a little nudge in the room then. What would you say, you know, there's a lot of young people you talked to this morning, you know, we're on this university campus. What would you, it's like that question we all love, like, what would you tell your 18-year-old self, Brooke? But like, what advice would you give to the younger Brooke?
When I was in college, I talked myself into, I talked the UN into giving me an internship. At that point, you had to be in graduate school to get an internship there. And I made a very strong case, and somehow they accepted me. The internship itself was not glamorous, intellectually stimulating work, but what was intellectually stimulating for me was being in that building where the world sends their top diplomats to try to resolve global problems around a table as opposed to at the end of a gun. It was in that building that I thought, I want to do this. I didn't even know what do this meant. I was just like, I want to work in international relations. This is what I want to do. I did not have the imagination, as vivid as my imagination was then. I did not have the imagination to think that one day, a few decades later, I could walk back in, going to be sworn in as an ambassador representing the United States. The thing is, you can know what you're interested in, but don't be limited by what you can imagine right now, because things will come your way that will open doors and turn into things. So be open. Don't be too rigid holding on to things.
I love that, and taking risks, and it's not always easy to do when you are thinking about, I'm in this major, I'm in this career path. I mean, were there times where you just went outside your comfort zone, went outside what you thought was supposed to be, thank you, what you thought was supposed to be the next step? I mean, and is there a good example, like beyond the UN internship one too, later in your career?
I've got one. So I think sometimes even when you're in the moment, you don't quite fully get the import of it. We've all had that experience, right? Something happens and you think, oh, that was a bummer. You know, I didn't get that job, or this didn't come together. And then later you realize actually probably that was a good thing because something else opened up, right? Or that you didn't fully understand what was going on that day. I had one of those you don't fully understand what's going on that day experiences in my first week as an ambassador at the UN. I was told, please go negotiate for the United States and the Security Council a new peacekeeping resolution to extend the peacekeeping mission in Western Sahara. And so I went off to do it, thinking, I have no idea what I am doing. I have never negotiated a peacekeeping agreement in the Security Council, and it took 6 hours. I wouldn't let the Security Council break, and I went back and forth and back and forth. Words here, words there. Can we accept this? And I remember walking back to the mission, the U.S. mission, and I thought to myself, well, at least I got it done. And I'm sure if I'd been more experienced ambassador, I could have gotten it done in 2 hours instead of 6. Live and learn. Months later, I was on the phone with someone at the State Department, and she was like, oh, you're Brooke Anderson. I was like, yeah. She said, Western Sahara. Like, we didn't think that you would actually get that done. So it was like this perspective that there I was, I thought it was slow, and actually it was a decent accomplishment at that time.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I love that story. I guess I'll do one last question because then I really do want to hear from people in the room. But, you know, the topic today is the long game. You know, I want to know, what does building what matters mean to you? And how do you think that you define that for yourself, and how do you think others can define that?
Yeah. I've always been driven by what I think ought to be in terms of the world that I think could be but doesn't exist right now. And so when I've made decisions about what it is I want to work with, I feel very lucky that I've been able to work on trying to solve problems that matter to me. Everyone's driven by different things, right? So building what matters, part of that is like an internal decision and compass to use. But then also just kind of setting those big challenging goals. The mystery of the microphone. Setting big challenging goals and then just figuring out kind of how to move toward them. So I'll...
Well, we've got some great volunteers here that are going to bring you a microphone. So if you just raise your hand, we've got some time for some questions for Brooke. I asked if there's some students that want to go first. Anybody up front? Come on, I know. Oh, we got one right up here in the front, right here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cecile. I also have an interest in foreign policy, and I was just wondering, because you mentioned red teams, what is the best way to approach a red team setting without it getting too heated or throwing in too much bias?
Well, I mean, part of the idea behind red teaming something, right, is to help squeeze out the bias and see things that you're not seeing. We all bring preconceived notions to things. No one has like 360 vision, right? I think one thing is being really clear at the front end of what problem it is you're trying to solve, or what are the issues that you want to red team. Because where I've seen red teams go kind of astray is where you try and bring everything in and then it just becomes muddled and confused, right? So that's one thing. But there is something inherently messy in red teaming as well, right? Because you're bringing ideas to the table that people may have not considered before, and sometimes people react and no, that cannot be, right? So you've got to just try and create the container for it, but know that there's a certain amount of messiness that's part of doing it, right?
While we're getting the next question, let's get one over here, but while we're getting it, real quick, I'm just curious, like, because when you talk about red team scenarios, like, how do you disagree in the workplace and then still come together as a team and move on?
Well, I think it is really important to create space for different perspectives and different points of view. It's important in families, it's important in personal relationships, it's important in the workplace, it's important in our politics. And I think when you're hearing views that you may disagree with, getting curious and thinking about, I need to understand that better. That is important. I try to encourage, sometimes with varying success, people to actually bring different views and work it through, right? Because if it's not said overtly and talked about and brainstormed around, then it'll come out sideways. So I think having a common mission that everyone's working toward, that is an important glue to hold everyone together too.
Yeah, I think we have to lean into that for sure. It's really great advice on that. Okay, I think we had a question over here. Yep.
Hi, I'm Audrey. I'm a transfer student. This is my first semester here at AU. So I'm very grateful to the Sine Institute for hosting these talks. I really enjoyed them. Thank you for your time today as well. Also, I'm glad to see you here at AU. My question was regarding your overarching goal. What happens when that changes, or if it's no longer feasible?
I've picked some goals that unfortunately have not gotten solved in this lifetime. So they still remain with me, whether it be preventing nuclear weapons from ever being used. Remember, I grew up during the Cold War, right? That overhang of the peril from that. And so I have a lot of different interests that drive me both personally and professionally. I would love to find that one of those big, ambitious goals actually no longer needs to be worked toward, but I haven't found that yet. But I hope that will happen. But I've also changed my career a lot, right? Which is also what you're sort of getting at. And when I look back, I see kind of the thread that connects all the very different things I've done. But at the time, it just was like the jungle gym, right? It's not linear.
Okay, who's got another question?
My name is Prakriti Nepal, and I'm a grad student at School of Education, American University. I'm also co-founder of a non-profit back in Nepal. It's called Education in Every Home. And I also work as International Student Advisor at International Student and Scholar Services at American University. I could relate to what you said about mountains being big in comparison to us because I'm from a mountainous country.
A place I very much want to go. I've never been there.
Oh, you should really go there because it's beautiful. And my question is, since Nepal is in a transitioning phase and its politics and its geography is always fluctuating, being from a non-profit point of view, what advice do you give in terms of boosting that hope that is required there, especially in the time of techno-feudalism or like how technology is impacting the whole world? Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you also for giving me that beautiful vision of mountains in Nepal. The work of nonprofits is essential to communities, to people, to cultures, to countries, and so I just commend that you're doing that work. And I think you said it in your question, right? It is essential to progress, and it does provide hope, sustenance, and support at times, especially when things are precarious.
I think we have time for one more. Do we have one more? Okay, closer to the back.
Hi, thank you for speaking with us today. My name's Erica. I'm also a grad student here at AU. And my question, regarding, you said there have been a few times where you've been placed in a position to do a job of some sort which you didn't necessarily feel ready for or qualified, which unfortunately is a common phenomenon in women who don't exactly pursue jobs or careers or positions because while they may be more than qualified, they just don't feel as if they are. And as a young career professional who is applying to multiple jobs, I was wondering how you get over that mental hurdle and taking agency and pursuing positions and careers that you don't feel as if you're ready for, but you really are.
That's a great question. I've had both sides of that equation, right? When I first moved to DC, I couldn't get a job on Capitol Hill, and my first job was making copies 12 hours a day for days and weeks on end, like literally just making copies to make. So that was not the job I wanted. But then I've also had the experience where it's like, am I qualified for that? In that story that I shared, the chief of staff, Stephen Saunders, he gave me that nudge. I mean, I think having mentors, people you can talk to get advice in your career is helpful. I wish I'd known that better earlier in my career, but you have that available to you. And just remember this, if you look at a job description and you look at it and you're like, yep, check, 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 I've got everything on it, it means you've already had that job. It's not a job that you haven't had yet. So know that that is part of it. Does that help at all? Okay, good question.
I could take it myself, and I think about how often that could be used. So it's certainly helpful for our young people in the room. I wish that we could keep this conversation going, Brooke, because I just think you have so much to offer. You've had such an incredible career. We love the work that you're doing now. We love that you hire great people at Pivotal that are alumni. And I know that Emily's not the only one, but we appreciate the work that you're doing as well. You are welcome back any time on campus. I want to just have everybody thank Brooke Anderson for her time and commitment to be on campus today. I just really admire you, and I think you're an inspiration for leaders and young aspiring leaders as well. So thank you for your time. I want to thank certainly our partners in today's event, the Women's Alumni Network, who is incredible, the Women in Politics program, who's also helped us as a part of the Sine Institute. We're so excited that you could spend time with us. I do have to say that, you know, we get to sit up here and be in this incredible conversation. So many people worked so hard to put this together today. So I really want to thank the Sine team, you know, also the women's alumni and the alumni staff that work here who work tirelessly for this. We have our Sine Institute grad students and our Sine stewards who sign up to help us with our fall programming. You all did an amazing job, so thank you so much. We want to invite you all to continue the conversation next door in 307. We've got a reception that's sponsored by the Office of Alumni Relations and the AU Women's Network. So as Brooke mentioned, we encourage you to have conversations, really, try to meet with people that are not only like-minded that you might disagree with, and we convene, communicate, and collaborate here at Sine. And to our alum in the audience, thank you so much for spending time with our students, whether it's at games or coming to events like this. They actually see you and understand when you go to AU what you're capable of doing and the amazing things that you can accomplish. So we love that you're being a part of that. And we encourage our alumni students in AU community to look for upcoming events, such as there's a 12-12 career coaching webinar, New Year, New Career, co-sponsored by the AU Career Center and the Women's Network. And certainly there's the Women in Leadership Breakfast every March, which I block off March because it's one of my favorite events. So we thank you for doing that. We wish you all the best in the future, Brooke, and we know we count on you having success for all the hard work that you're doing. So thank you again. Please, everybody, join us next door. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you.